So my presentation is titled Art Deco, A New Dawn. Dawn as in sunrise or seher in Urdu. Let's start with the basics. Art Deco is a French word short for art décoratif, decorative arts. Before I place it in context of timelines, for Art Deco, I'd like to take you a little before that, and we should look at probably 1890s to 1914, which is the Art Nouveau movement, the new art. This style was considered new, edgy, ahead of its time, less fussy than Baroque and Gothic and what have you. You can see in the slide here, it's very fluid, it's sinuous, it's moving towards abstraction. It's still influenced by flora and fauna. It's busy, but less so than its predecessors. And what happens next? If you look at the timelines here, 1914 is when World War I begins, ends in 1918. Art Deco actually sits very sort of comfortably between the two wars, which is why sometimes it's also known as the interwar style. Let's look at 1918. So we don't know that World War II is coming up, obviously. I want to look at the parallels of what we are going through as a civilization today in a post-pandemic world. What kind of mood are we in? There is a bit of introspection. We are editing, we are doing away with excess. At the same time, we want to celebrate our lives. We know life is precious. We want it all. We want to have parties. We want to engage in more meaningful ways. At the same time, we are editing what is superficial or extra. That's exactly the mood I'm suggesting. In 1918, you've been through a war, a global catastrophe, and you want something new. You want to progress. You want to move ahead. You're mindful of what you've been through, but you want a new style that speaks of hope. It speaks of excitement. It speaks of movement. It speaks of innovation. Like I said, my talk is titled A New Dawn. The sunburst motif, which is very classic Art Deco, is talking about all these literally in figurative forms and metaphorically, where this is also a period of great innovation in automobile design, engineering, newer materials in architecture, literature, fashion. It's really a sort of new renaissance of sorts. Another classic motif of the Art Deco movement, the fountain. Fountain is about plentiful, bounty, overflowing, hope, positivity, optimism, moving upwards, rising. And that's what you do after a war, after a pandemic, really. Emergence, you want to reach the sky, you're reaching for the stars. That's the kind of verticality and the movement that you're building towards. So these are the kind of graphics that are taken on by Art Deco in various media. Another important point between the two wars is the Exposition in Paris in 1925, where France is going through a crisis of sorts. It's losing its hold as being the epicenter of everything that's luxurious, handcrafted. And so this exhibition is for the world to relook at France as the leader in this sort of very bespoke craftsmanship with the various ateliers, all headquartered in Paris. The entire world comes to see this. This is the sort of celebration of Art Deco from which it moves to other parts of the world. It moves in all directions at various points in time. The next part of my presentation is going to talk about Art Deco in its various media. So everything that is deco. It moves to New York, that's the Rockefeller Center. You see it reaching for the sky. The skyscraper is again very Art Deco. It's stepped, it's ziggurats, it's pointing towards the sky. This is innovation in architecture and engineering, which Art Deco is celebrating. This is automobile. If you look at the timelines, it's all 1920s, 30s, and 40s. Look at the sort of graceful movement that you see in the car. It's aerodynamic. It's futuristic, it's racy, it's glamorous, it promises something forbidden even. The details, the ziggurats come here, the step detail, geometric abstraction, simplification of form, and yet ornamental. So this style was considered very modern, not modernist, but modern, because it was shedding a fair bit of excess ornamentation, yet holding on to what it considered essential ornamentation. Typography, I mean, you can't think of Art Deco without, the first thing that comes to your mind is the fonts that typographers created. Some of them were created for buildings, for advertisements. This is an ad from 1929. Look at the elongated form of the human figure. This is the classic sort of Gatsby-esque dandy. The hats, the movement, the flow of the car. The Porsche, the pocket square, the entire composition, typography, everything Art Deco. It's promising that you can be a part of this new movement, be stylish, be more modern. Fashion and Hollywood, when it moves to the United States, Hollywood takes to Art Deco, the whole era of jazz and cinema. The glamour is something goes very beautifully with the idea of cinema. You see it here in the garment, not just the graphics of the fan and the sunburst or the sunrise motif, but also the diagonal lines, the overall graphic composition, hairdo, the backdrops, everything glamorous, everything deco. Sorry? Can we do the questions later? Please, thank you. Sorry. The tiara, which is stiff and firm, is replaced by a bandeau, which is softer and more graceful, again very Art Deco. Crockery, these are tea sets, miniaturized almost from buildings. You have architectural details in them, very dramatic forms that come from a very sort of exotic idea of Africa. So Art Deco is also about the exotic. Egypt is exotic, Japan is exotic, India is exotic, Africa is exotic. So exotic materials and forms. It's of course this very orientalist approach to what is exotic, but that's what the time period is about. This was the various kinds of things we saw, basically objects, architecture, cars, and so on. Now let's have a look at where does Art Deco travel from France. It goes to Japan. Japan makes it its own. This is a lacquered screen with wood, distinctly Art Deco in terms of proportion and form. But the craft is very Japanese, lacquerware. You see it in France, but France gets it from Japan and China. You see it in America. This is a meat cutter made of aluminum. This is 1940, so this is after the Great Depression of the Wall Street crash in 1929. So there's less use of silver, there's more chrome and aluminum to make it more affordable. But again, very Art Deco in its form. Latin America, the most iconic image in Rio de Janeiro is Christ the Redeemer. Exaggerated length, very strong geometric lines, stiff folds, very graphic, angular features, very Art Deco again. It goes as far as Australia. This is stained glass in a church in Melbourne. Elongated human form, geometric fractals in lead. So stained glass, which is very Renaissance, which is very old, is also being reinterpreted in the Art Deco style by the church. So the style is so compelling that it travels everywhere in all media. You can see from the elongated length of the hair, the graphic patterns at the back. Again, the geometric composition is very, very Art Deco. This is Johannesburg, 1935, 5 years after the Rockefeller Center. This could probably be New York if you didn't know the name. So it translates, Africa doesn't want exotic Africa. Africa wants what's in the Western world. The Western world wants what's in Africa and so on. So it's really about what the others have, and Art Deco promises something foreign, something more heavenly, and that's what it really is talking about. The last couple of slides are India. Art Deco comes to India with the Maharajas. It comes to their Bombay palaces, it comes to their palaces in their kingdoms, in the princely states. This is my favorite example of Art Deco anywhere in the world, the Morbi Palace. This is shot by Raghubir Singh and it's in the Met collection. This is still preserved in its entirety. It is high deco. It's not partly deco or a nod to deco, but deco in all its glory. A bit like the interiors of the Umaid Bhavan. The Umaid Bhavan is not art deco in its architecture, but the interiors are very, very heavily deco. This is pure deco, like Manik Bagh in Indore, the Holkar's built, Yashwantrao Holkar built, was very art deco. That's now a government office. It's completely sort of bereft of its ornamentation and art deco style. But Morbi remains as sort of a very high point in the movement. Again, you see the sunburst motive, the rise. It's a celebration. The Maharajas want to convey a sense of progress, of internationalism, cosmopolitanism. So they bring a new style back from Europe to show their people, to show other princely states that they're progressive, they're international. That's really what this style starts as in India. In 1947, we again talk about the new dawn, the independence movement, and parallelly in the 1930s and 40s, we already have a bid for Purna Swaraj. When this culminates as full-blown independence, a cinema made by the Hussain family is called Liberty Cinema for obvious reasons. Again, liberty, hope, freedom, a new dawn. And I'd like to end this with this slide. This is the Ismail Beg Muhammad School on Muhammad Ali Road. You see Sir J.J. flyover slicing through it. This is what we do to our architectural heritage in this city. This is an Urdu medium school, the last few surviving in this city now. The day this photograph was shot a couple of months ago, there were only 3 pupils. This is not a staged photograph, by the way. There were just 3 pupils in school that day. On a good day, there are a handful more. And what this is really talking about, this poignant, beautiful photograph is talking about our apathy towards our built heritage, the decline of the language Urdu, the decline of this neighborhood, the decline of Art Deco architecture, which was about a new dawn and hope. And I'd like to conclude by quoting the revolutionary poet Faiz Ahmad Faiz, who speaks about this new dawn. Ye daag daag ujala, ye shab gazida seher, wo intezar tha jiska, ye wo seher to nahi, ye wo seher to nahi. Thank you.